Welcome once again to the Biz Live podcast. We're recording from our North Las Vegas studios at UNR Extension. My name is Mike Bindrup. I'm with the Small Business Education Program, and we're here today on the podcast talking about generative AI. And we're here today with Miss Tara Phelps, and she'll be talking to us about that. So welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And joined also with my co-pilot today, Shiva. And we will be talking about some of this stuff and how to implement and what it is, how it works, and what you can do to kind of start off with this. So, Tara, thanks for joining us. Would you like to kind of give us your 2-minute intro?
Sure.
What brought you here? What brought you here?
Yeah. Well, I'll leave that for the back end, but I am the managing director for Next Stage Strategies. Mm-hmm. We are an AI marketing and automation firm, consulting firm. We have been running and supporting a AI digital marketing club here in Las Vegas called Tech Vegas for the last 8 months. So we are continuing to grow that here in our community to help educate entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses, et cetera, on the practical use of generative AI tools for their business.
When and where does Tech Vegas meet?
So we've sort of been meeting all over town. It's once a month.
Okay.
Our next meeting is coming up on August 27th. It is from 5:30 till 7 p.m. The city of Las Vegas has been very kind to allow us to use their International Innovation Center this month.
Okay, good.
And free parking down at 5th Street. So I know that's always an issue.
We like free parking
Free
downtown,
parking works.
Yes.
But we're looking forward to having folks come in this particular month, where the focus of our subject is going to be using generative AI to create ads and content for your target market.
Excellent. Now, do they have a website or somewhere you can access them easily?
We are on Meetup. So if you go out on meetup.com and search for Tech Vegas AI, we will pop up and then just RSVP, so we know how many folks are going to be there. So we have the room set up, and it's a workshop, right? So it's
hands-on.
It's hands-on. I make my audience be volunteers for their business, and I'm not just using, sample, hey, this is the what I came up with. It's real business owners and going through and creating content for them. And some of them are like, can I take this? And so sure is the answer, right? But it makes it very practical so that folks then begin to ask questions. Well, if it was my business, could I do this? And could I do that?
Yeah.
And that's great. And you always know you have a great club meeting when folks stay afterwards and then they begin to network with each other. And I'm literally, half an hour later or an hour later going, okay, guys, we got to get out of the room, right? But there's a good demand for this education. I think the hype of generative AI, if we're coming down into the trough of disillusionment, if you believe anything that Gartner and some of these other organizations are talking about, the AI hype, right? Folks haven't been able to get what it was hyped to be, which was you could run your whole business on AI, and that's not necessarily the best idea. And certainly small businesses don't have the kinds of infrastructure or dollars to be able
needed for that.
It's just, but understanding the usefulness of the tool and having education, not just about the tool, but relating it back to what do we know now about technology? How do you use technology now? What's the difference of this thing? That's really what I have found out that I've had to do with these folks to focus them. Because some of these courses that you go into, hey, I'll give you a list of 2,200 prompts. Nobody's going to parse through 2,200 prompts to find what they're looking for, right? It's understanding how to create a prompt, why you need to have a persona, why you should add different parameters, what that's doing in terms of what I call the algebra of generative AI, right?
Prompt engineering.
Right. Yeah. There's a formula for using it against different LLMs, why you want to do this in different versions of LLMs. Guess what? You'll get different answers out of them, and some might be better cast for your business. And practically walking people through it, I think many of the education courses focused on development. Certainly it's a useful tool to be able to program, but how does that help the florist or the
not
pizza?
everybody programs. I mean, we all use programming. We all use coding, but we don't do it. I mean, 1% of the population might do it.
Right.
So for the small business owner that's listening out there and they're going, most have heard of ChatGPT. That's probably the AI platform that they have.
Sure.
What's the difference, because we're talking about generative AI? What is the difference between, I guess, if there is a regular AI and is there a regular AI and is there a generative AI, and what's the difference?
So generative AI is a subset of AI.
Okay.
So artificial intelligence basically is programmatic software or tools, right, that mimic basically human intellect.
Mm-hmm.
It operates at a higher exponential rate, right? The difference between AI and generative AI is using that word generative, it's creating something new. Not all AI actually creates something new.
Some of it parses it or
it's analytics.
Brings it all together.
Right. So generative means that it's creating something new. So ChatGTP, and they labeled it that way. So what is the GTP? Generative, right? G, transformative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Product on the back end.
Okay.
So a bunch of programmers, like, why would they come up with this tool, right? They could have labeled it a little bit better, but that's because they're programmers. And the idea behind this is that they have taken our natural language, and you still behind the scenes there's data. This tool is actually is programmed not for accuracy, but for predictability.
Mm-hmm.
So large sums of data across the internet, they have an algorithm that says, hey, I'm going to translate these words, which are ultimately translated into zeros and ones, right? I'm going to go out and look at all of this information out on the internet and look for these patterns of these zeros and ones, which are words. Now, we recognize it as words, but when you create a prompt, you're asking it to bring back those patterns of zeros and ones in words and predictably come back and provide you your answer. So when somebody says, hey, I need a thank you email, it goes out and says, I'll take those words, thank you email, it translates it into zeros and ones, and then it scans the internet for how many times somebody has typed that across the internet, and then it finds the most common versions of that and brings it back to you in terms of the words that follow after thank you email. It's crazy.
Now is it true if I'm using ChatGPT and so is Shiva, we ask it the same question, is it going to give us different responses based on what we've previously asked it and or a bunch of other variables?
Yes. So this is really interesting as well, is that you don't always get the same answer for the same prompt. So because each time it's going out and doing a separate search. And every moment the internet is getting more and more information. It's continuing to grow, and the algorithm is continuing to change. As you probably have heard in the news, they're continuing to look for large sets of data in order to train this algorithm, to continue to train the algorithm. So as you add more data to it, guess what? Your answer is going to change at any given moment. So this is part of why I train entrepreneurs on, once you go out and you craft a prompt because you're looking to create whatever ad it is, you end up being editor. This is an augmentation tool. It's not a, hey, my problems have been solved tool, right? It's really an augmentation, and that's why I recommend using different tools, because you'll get
different responses.
I
had a discussion with an entrepreneur the other day, and I was showing him what ChatGPT can do, and it was interesting because he was throwing he said, "Oh, this is perfect." So you just ask it one thing and then done. It gives it back to me. I'm ready to go. And it's like, no, you're not.
You can.
Because it's not necessarily done, right? And so there's a process when you go back and forth, you ask it certain things. And then I think we learn as we ask it certain prompts. We call those prompts, right? When
Correct.
we ask it something, it's the way that you phrase it, and it's the way that you ask. And you can have a prompt that's several paragraphs long.
A page long.
A page long of prompts if you write it properly to say, I want you to generate X amount of content. Like, let's just say we're generating content for social media. You could say, I want you to generate a 300-word Instagram post that goes out to these type of clientele discussing these things. Please use an active voice as you're doing this in reference to X, Y, and Z. Also, please include this, and this, plus this, but do not use this, and this.
Correct.
And it will actually generate something.
Yes, you forgot your persona, though.
Oh, yeah. How does the persona work? I need to know that.
So persona is perspective and point of view.
Okay.
If you think about this particular tool and the way that it's been programmed, what you're really doing is, if you can imagine a word funnel, when you start with persona, which is your perspective, you are a social media manager. Then it goes out and it starts with, that's your high level sort of all the data that you're looking through.
I can say, I am an instructor.
What type of instructor?
I am a small business instructor teaching a group of potential entrepreneurs about finance.
That would be a great start.
Wow, that's a great prompt. I've never used persona before.
Yeah, and honestly, like,
fail for me.
Yeah, and honestly for me, like, I've noticed like prompts that I do give that persona have been better results than I didn't use it.
Now, I've had responses come back from ChatGPT, especially I was asking it some stuff on some complex accounting and data analysis stuff, and the formulas came back incorrect. And I went, oh, I got to watch this, because I was doing one with break-even analysis. Give me an example of break-even analysis for this and this and this, and it threw me back. There's two different kinds of break-even. One is for a product-based business, and another is for a service-based business.
Right.
It threw me the product-based into the service, and it messed everything up.
What was your prompt, though? Did it add service? Or did you just say break even?
I said break-even analysis for this type of business based on these products, but it didn't interpolate the products as being part of that. And so, or I had one where I was talking about a food truck. This is another specific accounting thing where there are certain things that are costs of goods and certain things that are expenses. And it was accounting for certain things should have been included in the cost of goods that I assumed it would know, but it doesn't. So
it is not. This is what's interesting, is that, like I said, as part of the hype, is the tool amazing because when it comes back to you, it comes back to you in words you recognize. That's the first time in our technical history. That's amazing in and of itself. But the validation of what you get back from the tool, I mean, this tool can what they call hallucinate, which is as it's going out and the algorithm is trying to do its thing based on the prompt that you provided it. If there's no data there, it does what I call MSU, and I'll let you fill in, make blank up, right?
I do that all the time.
I know.
I'm half generative. I didn't even know
MSU.
You know?
And so checking what this tool comes back with, to your point, assuming that it knows what the parameters are, often I'll ask, hey, can you calculate this? And then it says, yes, I can. Please provide me the parameters. And then I'll say, what are all the parameters that you need to know to give me an accurate result?
Oh,
and then it will list those, and then I can provide those. And the ones, to your point, that you would assume, you're like, well, you should know what that like what a simple break even is.
Yeah.
But what that means.
One of the things I found fascinating is its language translation capabilities are exceptional, and the accuracy level is like 99%, if not 100.
Right.
And I've used it hundreds of times to translate things from Spanish to English and vice versa, because we do part of our program in Spanish.
Yep.
And to check certain things, and it's like, wow, this is, accent marks completely correct. So I'll run my version through it just to make sure, correct any accent marks I got wrong, and it will fix every little nuance.
Have you even checked out the voice mode on the app?
Were you talking to it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
you can
I use that all the time.
And
so.
you can do like a full translation like app.
Yeah.
Like through that.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
It's crazy how accurate it is.
Well, and that was
and how fast it is.
Yeah.
It's instantaneous. It doesn't even think. It just does.
Well, the fundamental level of what the tools are, and part of that algorithm is language, right? So it better be good at it. We've done some translation with it. So you start playing with the tool, right? In Cyrillic for Russian, and then doing it in other, pinyin for Chinese and some other things, and you're like, okay, so it's actually printed it. The problem was, of course, we didn't have anybody there to validate it afterward. But it's pretty. It can be kind of intimidating, right? That it has that power to be able to do that. This tool requires a whole different way of thinking, and this is something that I teach as well, which is we understand and know Google, but Google is really an indexing based solution. People would argue with me about that. The folks that work at Alphabet and
it's
others. It's
kind of like Siri on your phone, right? If you're asking something that's been quantified and is in like an encyclopedia type of information, like who was the World Series winner in 1986, it already knows that's out there. It can scrub the web for that. Other times, if you ask it something more difficult, what do you think the weather's going to be like tomorrow?
Right.
Based on, here's what I found on the web. You can look up this.
Right. Yeah. Go to.
It won't even look it up for you. It won't even
channel.
read it for you.
Yeah.
One thing I find interesting on AI, especially on ChatGPT, is I had it pull up song lyrics the other day.
You can create song lyrics.
I've done that. I haven't gotten it down yet because it rhymes too much. It makes it too abnormal.
There was, it's kind of funny. There are many, many tools that are out there. SoundDraw is one of them. There was some kids here in town. They had a hip hop conference. And so I went through, and there are many AI tools now that are available that literally they have an app that you can just whistle, and it will create a song for you. Oh, I can't remember what the name of it is right at the moment. Yeah. You can hum a tune. It will write a song for you.
It actually gave me a copyright violation when I said, pull up some lyrics from the Eagles for this song. And it said, I'm sorry, that violates my terms of.
So it actually gave you an error.
It gave me an error. I was surprised.
Wow.
Because they filed a lawsuit.
That's what happened.
And OpenAI probably has restricted certain things. I would imagine.
And song lyrics apparently are one of them. It does write great haikus, I will say that. So those are some of the best ones. But when I tell it, write me a country music song about horses, beer, and Las Vegas, it'll throw down completely. But everything rhymes, and it sounds like really a little bit cheesy. So it's like,
yeah. Well,
I need some. I'm not obviously asking the right stuff, and so part of it is being able to work with it and figure out the prompts, which brings me to my next question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ethics of this.
Yes.
Okay. At some point, we're going to go onto Amazon.com, and there's going to be thousands of books written through machine learning.
Right. They're terrible.
Do we have to disclose this at some point? Is like when we go to our doctor's office, are we going to be met with machine learning at every different level? Is Is this going to take over? Is everybody going to be just sitting back and kicking back and going, just let the AI handle it? It'll
So
be great.
Terminator.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah,
Kind
I
of.
think there's so this is, you could go down the whole rabbit hole with ethics with this tool, but I would also say that, you know, the analogy of when the rise of the internet came about decades ago. I recall when they were saying, "Oh, this is going to take over," and here's an old example. So, when they released Lotus 123, which was the precursors of what we know as Excel.
Oh, Excel.
Excel.
That's right. Excel, Lotus. Yeah.
Right? So that you had it was green and black screen, cathode ray 2 screen, where you could punch in a formula and it would do the calculation for you. There was bloody murder that the accountants were going to be gone and that the machines were going to take over and tell us what we were going to do.
It's the same with PDF files. Everybody was saying we're going to have a paperless office. Everything's going to be paperless. We use more paper than ever before, and we don't even all have printers.
Yeah.
You know, but we will print things. Remember when everybody used to print emails back in the day?
And put them in a file
And put them
folder.
in a file folder and store them.
Cabinet.
Like,
Not my time.
Yeah.
I don't even like to look at emails. So, jeez.
Me either. So I think this tool, there will be some amazing applications for the tool in terms of analytics, particularly in the healthcare industry. The initiation of AI, aside from in the finance space, but in the healthcare space and just in general analysis, is something that we haven't had to date. We're gonna be learning.
Yeah.
It's doing predictive analysis now in terms of they're saying, oh, okay, we can tell if you're going to have a heart issue 10 years earlier. My first answer to that is, would I want to know, even if you could do it? Right?
Yeah. Would you want to know when you're going to die if you could know that?
Well,
To the day? It could get that. It could get that predictive.
Right. Theoretically, sure, but it becomes incumbent upon us how we use this tool and how we adopt it. Again, I think there's a lot of hype. If only 4% of the regular users of generative AI tools really know how to use them, we're a long way away from it's going to take over the world. Now, there's, why are they focusing on big business and infrastructure? Yeah. There's a lot of money. Right. And there's a lot of computing power and costs that what we're going to watch is infrastructure stuff going on. Right. Remember when Intel was up there, like top of market, and now they're struggling. Right.
Now it's a hard time.
Right. Now it's
they're
NVIDIA,
just laying off employees. Yeah.
NVIDIA and Apple. So nobody stays at the top. So it should be very interesting to see. There's going to be a lot of tools, companies that are buying each other. Like, we're in a very volatile environment right at the moment with this generative AI for the small user. Like, creating text, that people ask, why didn't you jump into development? Because you obviously understand it and start with the text component, which is basically marketing. Like, because small business owners can't really break their own marketing. It's incremental, right? If you can help them incrementally raise their revenues by 5 or 10% because you're using this crazy tool, that's amazing.
And I was going to ask, so in your company, when you get hired by a small firm, small business owner, they bring you in to probably set up systems, I'm guessing, to help them use this on a more regular basis in their company to be able to do certain things. Can you give a couple of examples of what types of ways people are using generative AI in small business?
So the first and foremost, if I were to tackle anything, it's going to be looking at their marketing, right? So taking their existing marketing and then running it through, creating some prompts, et cetera, for who is your target buyer, looking at what they've already got now, right? And sort of doing a revival of whatever marketing they may have ongoing. That's the first place that we usually like to tackle, and then automating the back end, so collection of prospects and things along those lines. Most of those tools have been around for a long time, but small business owners don't really follow the model, right?
True.
That they know how to sell flowers, but if you say, hey, what's your workflow and how often are you touching?
A lot of times they just don't have it.
At all. So being able to the AI, the conversation about AI opens the door to, let's put in some fundamental marketing systems for you to make your life a little easier. The second place that we like to look at is the financial, what their sales are. Mm-hmm. So I know there's a lot of conversation about, if I attach a file, it's going out there into the open market and somebody will have my intellectual property or my sales information. Okay, do not attach your tax return and put it out on OpenAI.
No.
But you could download all of your data from Stripe or whoever your bank is.
Your credit card
processor, right? Yeah. And then ask AI to do an analysis and identify any unique or interesting patterns. And there actually was an article that I read about a gentleman who had a pizza parlor. And they did this over a 6-month period, so they downloaded all of their data. Now, when you do any of these transactions, you'll have information not just about the dollar amount and what the product was, but it actually gives you the time.
Dates and times.
Dates and times. And so they put it through ChatGPT, and ChatGPT recognized that every other Friday when they were doing a special for Mediterranean pizza from 4 to 6 p.m., that their sales on either side of that were 20% greater.
Hit a spike. And it wasn't just that people were buying the Mediterranean pizza, it was that they were buying the other types of products that they had, the chicken wings, et cetera, around that time period. So the answer to that was, you better be offering Mediterranean pizza more frequently. Now, for the small pizza owner, to him, it was, $500 a week more. $2,000 a month more over the course of the year, right? That's substantial because he didn't recognize, he just thought, he's like, well, yeah, so, the Mediterranean pizza sells pretty well. Those types of patterns, we aren't. It boils down to data and the analysis of the data. I always say, half of marketing is actually the data that you get from people because I've had, I used to own an ad agency, and we'd always ask people, who's your existing buyers? Who's buying from you now is your target market, whether you like it or not, because usually they bring us in to say, we'd like to attack this new target market, but here's why the old target market is buying from you. So don't neglect those, but how do you amplify something to go elsewhere, right? It's a little tricky prospect for people.
Yeah, the data will speak for itself. So, like in that instance, if you ran an analysis against what are the demographics of that particular buyer community, you could attach a spreadsheet, give it to ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, and it will come back and it'll give you some pretty good. Some of this information will be obvious, right? But what are the outliers? Because it's typically, like anything else, it's in some sort of bell curve, and understanding, what we found out is that we had some more outliers than what we thought. That might be our first, if we're going to expand into another market.
You might have some niches you've neglected.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's also helpful too, and I'm sure you've had this experience, is that data speaks volumes. So in presenting to a small business owner why they might want to go into that new market, it's not just you saying, hey, it's a good idea.
It's the actual numbers.
It's the
supported by data.
Their own data, right? And that's very powerful because I know, and I've been guilty of this, even in the course of my career of, hey, I have a gut instinct, right? But then when I look at the data, I go, oh, maybe my instinct
it might be some indigestion. So. Shouldn't have had anchovies on the pizza last night. But we had a situation in my agency. We got brought in, we were working with a home builder, and they had built these houses that had detached casitas, right? That were either used for, and this they already knew. They were used for either mother-in-law's quarters or they were used as home offices. So they had a large percentage of people who were entrepreneurs and were working from home and used that, or they had, aunt or uncle, grandma and grandpa, or an older child was living in this casita. So we knew that was part of the case, but they couldn't close the community out. They just weren't selling enough. So we went through and we asked people that came through to ask. We asked them 2 questions, and that was it. Well, number 1, 3. We asked them, "How'd you hear about us?" Right? Okay. And we gave them like 10 different things. How did you hear about us? And the builder wanted all those in there. There was way too many to ask, but they wanted them. So we asked that. And then the second one was, what was your favorite TV show? And what radio station do you like the best? Right?
Interesting.
First question, 98% of the people put your TV ad, which was funny because we didn't have one running, right? So it's like, the owner's like, "This is great. They got us confused with somebody else, and they're coming in." I said, "Not really, because you're not selling. So they either got you confused with somebody, and it feels like a bait and switch when they get there, or they don't want to fill out your stupid form because it's so long, right? You put too many choices in there." So we said TV was number 1, and they just checked it to get on and see your houses, right?
Yeah.
But when we asked them about the TV show, we got a varied amount of responses, but the radio station was interesting. Overwhelmingly, it was about 83% listened to the country music station of all things. Okay. Interesting. And that little piece of data, and we gave away a TV too. So we said, if you fill this out, we're giving away a TV once a month. And then we had a picture, we had the TV there, a big flat screen, and then we we gave away, I think, 3 of them total. It took 3 months. We sold the project out in 3 months, by the way.
Okay.
Because... And we put the picture of the winners up there so I could actually see this is actually being given away. And here's the person holding it going, "I'm so happy I got a TV," right?
I have a new TV for my home.
So everybody's real eager to, all of a sudden legibility gets real good, right? Oh, my email I'm printing now. Yes, this is really great. Right? But what we did is we took that data and we put our money into ads on the country music station. And we talked about, guess what, the casita for your business or whatever. Or for your mother-in-law, we had 2 different ads that ran on there with it, and it sold out within 3 months. Like it was amazing. But just that piece of data, I mean, very rarely do we get it wrapped that clean.
Yeah, I was going to say
that was like one of the few instances in my career where it's like, well, wow, it's just a gift, right? AI can help you get a pre-wrapped gift, if you will, right?
It can. You have to know how to prompt it and ask it to do that. This is completely different. Google is, to your point, as you were referring to earlier, is we have learned that basically in 9 words or less to put in what we're looking for in Google, you would get horrible results. This is statistically speaking. So the average person uses between 9 and 11 words in Google. If you use 9 or 11 words with ChatGPT, you're going to get a terrible output.
You're going to get a rough response.
The best outputs are 26 words or longer.
20? Wow. All right. You heard that, everybody. 26 words or longer.
Right? And incorporating a persona in the front. It's somewhere in the front end or the back end of that, which is...
I'm going to try that because I haven't tried that yet. I was messing around with it the other day, and I was asking it to draw things. I said... Draw me a picture of one was a small business owner on a tightrope over some alligators in a pond.
So DALL-E, you were using DALL-E,
and it literally drew stick figures. It's really funny.
You said draw.
I took this thing and I was like, "What the hell is this? It's horrible, right?" And then I'm like, I need to probably expand. I've seen generative AI pictures,
images.
Right, and images, which are pretty amazing.
Yes.
And I'm leaning into that now. That's my next little foray. But I haven't used Persona, so I'm going to try to use Persona. That's good.
So also too, you don't want AI to draw you a picture. You want it to create an image.
Create an image.
A hyper-realistic image.
I can ask ChatGPT to do that, and it will do it.
I tried that with Meta AI too, and it did a pretty good job about.
Yeah, don't even get me started with Meta's version. I used all the Facebook data. That's...
Well, listen, everybody's throwing out, they have this AI generative tools on their
solution.
Build your website now on GoDaddy. We're using AI. Is it really AI, or is it just taking your responses and packaging it and throwing it out? That's hard to say.
So there's a lot of templates on the back end.
Yeah.
Right, that they've already created, and then they are doing some analytics on the front end for what it is that you're putting in. But again, if you put in a terrible prompt, you tend to get a terrible output. I don't even know how many hundreds of different tools that I've played with. None of other than maybe Figma. Yeah. I don't think there's any other generative tool that I've used. Now, look, if you are not a web designer and you are just a small business owner and you don't know anything about HTML,
you might be okay.
Or you'll get something, right? It's probably better than if you just tried to do it on your own. But I've used lots of the different, tools for sound, like we talked about, tools for creating, text to video. So they've got NVIDIA and Vizsla and Veed.io, et cetera, where you put in a prompt and it gives you a video. In fact, one of my clubs, we did that with a group. It was pretty funny because he was a electronics parts manufacturer. And he said, I'm trying to look for more distributors. So we came up with a pretty good prompt, so we thought. And we put it into the video tools. And it came back with, because it couldn't find segments of any kind of, electronic parts for manufacturers. And so in the back end, it had a bunch of kids with hammers hammering away at breaking apart a computer, right? Because it couldn't find the stock that it was looking for.
It's like, nope, sorry.
So these tools have not really matured, to be fair.
There was a video one, and I don't remember the name of it. And you upload a, let's say, an hour-long video, and it'll bust it into 25 different clips for you. Yeah. And add all sorts of bells and whistles. And I thought that was kind of neat. But
I was going to ask, did you hear about OpenAI's Search GPT? And
yes.
I know you mentioned ChatGPT is very different from Googling things, but with this introduction of Search GPT, is this going to be a little bit more familiar to people, or are they still going to want to create those personas?
So I am signed up. I don't have access yet. I'm not in the beta group yet, but boy, oh boy, am I interested to see what that ends up looking like. Yeah. I mean, look, to be fair, there's going to be a lot of tools that are out there, and don't be fooled, because what they're looking for is a new market to be able to have ads and generate revenue. I mean, the reason why Meta is out there with Llama and Grok and, Elon Musk and everybody and his brother is trying to come up with their own version of an LLM is they want a share of this market space.
What is an LLM?
So it's a large language model.
Large language model. Okay.
So, and that's the behind the scenes. It's the data that's been captured and joined with the algorithm together. So you have your LLM with that algorithm times your prompt. So what you're looking for equals your outcome. So you are actually a developer. When you're typing into ChatGPT or any of these other generative tools, you are actually prompting your scripting for all intents and purposes. You are a programmer.
We're part of the process. We're collaborating with it. Yeah.
Right. So that's how it's different. Most people struggle with it because it's not natural, right? It's
not real natural.
It's not natural. And so maybe if you were, worked for a corporation and you had an assistant, you would say, hey, I need you to go out and do some market research for me. And what I need is a report, and I want these types of analytics within this report, and return it back to me in a table format. We don't go to Google and type that kind of thing in, right?
So you think talking to generative AI, we should kind of treat it as like another person?
There's something about
There's something
that.
to it. I say please.
I say please and thank you to my...
No, seriously, I say, Mom always said to be nice, right? So I'm like, can you please do this and this and this? And it'll say, sure, Mike, and it's like, it talks to me. It's kind of weird, but yeah. I try to treat it like a person.
It's pretty interesting. Sometimes
Skynet will spare us when the time comes. Maybe,
and then you talk about ethics. Just keeping in mind that this tool it has inherent biases in it.
Sure.
Think about the types of data that it's going out and grasping, both good and bad. But if you type into this tool, hey, give me all of the, good news articles on X, Y, and Z, that's all you're going to get is good stuff.
Yeah,
if you tell it, give me all the bad stuff, it'll give you all the bad stuff. So that's even one of the parameters that if you're trying to do like an opinion piece or something along those lines, that you have to make sure, give me an unbiased perspective, or provide me all of the URLs that you used in order to, aggregate the data so that you have some of that research behind what you're trying to put together. That's why I'm a little concerned about, some of that data coming from Meta, right?
Yeah.
It's social media is the best presentation, or you're trying to sway opinion. So if that's your data set,
there's a lot of biases there.
Right. There's a ton of biases.
And I'm a little concerned about its use in education, right? Where we create using words, research and things like this, dissertations,
right?
This type of thing. Our theses. We used to have these websites we'd actually upload students' work into, and it would kick it out and let us know if that's been plagiarized. But how is something plagiarized when it's created on the fly, personalized for the person? So now we have students sitting back going, I can get my master's degree now because I can actually get that thesis written, or I can do my dissertation out of this. And
yeah, I just I finished my master's at Georgetown in 2021. And we did have a plagiarism tool that we had to run all our papers.
Everything goes through it,
right? And you had to have a score of an 11 or less. And it would it also did a grammar check and some of these other things, but it was checking URLs and, making sure it was legitimate resources, et cetera. I would mirror your concern about the purpose of education is to help teach our youth critical thinking.
And how to learn.
How to learn in that critical thinking, right? So when you grow up one day and things don't go as planned, that you have the skills to be able to manage through difficult, difficult.
How do you
points in
retool?
life.
How do you pivot?
Right.
You can't, I mean, you can teach this, but if you haven't taught it and kids end up going,
yeah, right.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's the critical thinking, but there's also the communication skills, right? There's a lot of conversation about these tools damaging, our relationship skills, right?
Yes.
Texting is not the same as having a conversation. If there's any youth out there, you need to learn to have the difficult conversations. There are no difficult conversations via text. It's standing in front of somebody else and looking at their face as you explain, what's difficult about your relationship. That's what keeps those bonds of the relationship tight.
It's over,
right?
baby. Yeah. It's not
look,
you. It's really me.
It's really me, right? And look, I'm a proponent of the technology, but even Shiva will know I'm not having long conversations via texts with people, so for business owners, it's the same type of thing, which is the best sale of your product or service is going to happen when you're sitting in front of somebody.
Selling.
Woo, like
Personal selling. Yep.
every day. So don't be, one of the kids, I did a thing here for STEM when they had the festival for the, science, technology, education, fourth and fifth graders. And I went in and I did an AI presentation, and they created an image. It was a giant chicken nugget riding on a white unicorn in the desert with pink flowers.
I like that.
But one of the kids asked me, he said, "Can I have AI do all my homework for me?" And I looked at him and I said, "No. And you should talk to your teacher about that." Right?
We're like, sign that young man up for a business, though. That's good. We want him thinking outside the box like that.
So AI is good for some things. It is excellent at other things. It's exponential at still other things, and then it's terrible.
It's terrible at certain things.
And so knowing the difference between those, I think, is where the struggle is going to be for us as a society. Look, educators are that challenge. And don't get me wrong, when I did my master's document, would it have been nice to have AI? Yes. But I wouldn't have used it to write it. I would have used it to check it and to grammar it and write as an augmentation, because I want to understand the subject of what I'm talking about.
I was going to say that for business, as an augmentation for what you're doing or checking your work, making sure that it couldn't be better, that's where it really glows.
It shines in that space. Absolutely.
So I know we're getting long on time here, but this has been an interesting conversation. What are 3 kind of tips you would suggest for small business owners that are just scratching the surface with this? Maybe they've installed ChatGPT on their phone and they're going, not quite sure what to do. What are 3 things 3 areas or 3 things you could encourage them to do to move forward with this?
I think what's interesting is keeping in mind that, asking the tool about to do an analysis of their business and their website. You can provide the website link, and
it will actually go to your website and
it looks at your website and say, give me a summary of what
I've never asked it to do that. That's kind of interesting.
Of your products and services. Give me a summary of what your products and services are. And be prepared for what that answer back is, right? That's going to give you a quick snapshot of.
If they looked at ours, she might puke, It'd be like, God, Mike, wow, how bad is this? I'm like, it's the university. I'm so sorry. This is just how we do it. Look, IT, look what ChatGPT said is wrong with our website. Thank you.
Right. And so why is this important? Because the tools now for indexing that are out there on the internet they're using AI. And so if the message that you get back from that doesn't align with your brand and your marketing, you probably need to make some adjustments in either, right? So in the communications out, et cetera. The other aspect to this, and so that kind of goes hand in hand, which is ask and then align what you've got on your website to what it is that you're sending out, if you have any kind of communication out there with your buyers.
Gotcha.
And then last but not least, just make sure, use it for good, use AI for good. So when you're asking it to do things, don't use it to I had a gentleman who approached me after one of my courses who said, can you help me write a prompt so that I can write my father-daughter speech at my daughter's wedding?
Don't do that, bro. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy to use AI to completely generate the description of what your products and services are without.
Don't do that.
Use it as an augmentation, not as a replacement.
Okay, so use it as an augmentation. Let it do the research. Incorporate that into what you're doing. And don't use it for evil purposes,
Don't use it
essentially.
Shiva. I was going to ask, we kind of talked about small businesses using generative AI. And personally, if you've worked with them for the last 8 months, what are some success stories that you've found?
So couple of them. One of the gals that was at one of my courses, she's wanted to start a luxury travel service. Okay. And we literally wrote the version of what her brand and marketing should be in one of our courses, which was you should have seen, she was almost crying. She's like, I'm telling all my friends, they have to come to your club meeting, right? And then also I have a good girlfriend of mine, Mystic Mona. She is a tarot card reader here in town. She's just psychic. She's been here for a really long time. She's been a good friend.
I think I know of her. Yes.
She's a really good friend.
There.
So
I have some psychic friends. I've heard of her.
But great story of a solopreneur who's done really well over a period of time, but she had no automation and she had done her own website. And so we completely recast that and put automation.
Psychics can't see what they need to help themselves with, by the way.
Just FYI. There might be a little bit of truth there.
It's true.
And so we redid our website, redid our marketing, automated the back end, and she's had,
success from that.
Yeah, wow, 5 figures of additional.
5 figures.
Wow. 4 figures. We're at 4 figures, but
so
but it's it works. When I get a text message, I just got a new client who's in Ireland, that kind of thing. And the feedback where people are sending me letters and emails and saying, "Oh my God, your stuff is amazing." And that was not the focal point. The focal point was there was no AI course in town that was doing this. I'm like, well, I'll start this thing. Well, if 3 people show up, it'll be good. And 25 people showed up, and I went, whoa.
That's awesome. Well,
That's cool.
thank you very much for being with us here today. How can people find you?
So we are Tech Vegas AI out on meetup.com. Just do a search. You're welcome to come and participate in our next meeting on August 27th.
And how do they reach you specifically? What's your phone number?
Phone number is 702-526-6988, Next Stage Strategies.
Thank you very much for being with us here today. This has been, once again, another episode of the Biz Live podcast. And go do something great in your business, hopefully with generative AI today. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.